Still single? Sometimes, the cruelest questions are not asked to seek answers. They are asked to reopen wounds that took years to heal. The crystal chandeliers of the Grand Regent Ballroom scattered rivers of golden light across polished marble floors as Naomi Carter stood near the edge of the crowd, her fingers resting lightly against the stem of a champagne glass she had barely touched. Beyond the towering windows, Manhattan shimmered beneath the spring night sky, every skyscraper glowing like a monument to ambition and second chances. 10 years. It had been 10 years since she had last walked into a room carrying the weight of old memories. Tonight was supposed to be simple. A charity gala. A celebration of educational initiatives across New York. An evening dedicated to scholarships, opportunity, and hope. The kind of event Naomi attended regularly now. The kind of room she belonged in. Yet as she stood beneath the soft glow of the chandeliers, there was a strange ache she couldn't quite ignore. Maybe it was because this wasn't just any gala. Many of the guests came from the same university where she had once been a young woman with borrowed textbooks, impossible dreams, and a heart that believed love could conquer every obstacle. Back then, she had believed in forever. Back then, she had believed in Ryan Mitchell. A server passed carrying silver trays of sparkling champagne. Laughter floated through the ballroom. A jazz quartet played softly from the stage. The atmosphere was elegant, effortless, expensive. Naomi adjusted the sleeve of her black evening gown. The dress was simple, not flashy, not designed to demand attention. Its beauty lived in its quiet confidence, much like the woman wearing it. Her wedding ring caught a fragment of chandelier light, a small flash of gold, a reminder of the life she had built far away from the mistakes of her past. Several guests approached throughout the evening. Board members, community leaders, donors. They greeted her warmly, thanked her for the work her foundation had done for underserved students across the country. Naomi smiled politely, accepted their compliments, then gently redirected the attention back to the cause she cared about, that had always been her way. Success had changed her circumstances. It had never changed her character. She was speaking with the director of a scholarship program when she felt it. A gaze. Heavy. Familiar. The kind of gaze that reached across a crowded room and wrapped itself around an old scar. Slowly, she turned. And there he was. Ryan Mitchell. For a brief moment, the noise of the ballroom seemed to fade. He looked older than she remembered. Not old. Just different. More polished. More expensive. More tired. His tailored navy tuxedo fit perfectly. His smile, however, carried something she recognized instantly. Arrogance. The same arrogance that had once disguised itself as ambition. Ryan stared at her for several seconds. Surprise flickered across his face. Then amusement. Then something else. Something harder. The woman beside him whispered something in his ear. He nodded absent-mindedly without looking away from Naomi. And then he began walking toward her. Each step felt strangely familiar. Like a scene from a movie she had watched long ago. One she thought had already ended. Conversations quieted as Ryan approached. A few former classmates recognized both of them. Curiosity spread quickly. People loved old stories, especially unfinished ones. Ryan stopped a few feet away. A smile curved across his face. Not warm, not kind. The smile of a man who believed he already knew the ending. Well, he said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. Look who finally showed up. Naomi met his gaze calmly. Good evening, Ryan. The simplicity of her response seemed to disappoint him. He had expected discomfort, maybe even bitterness. Instead, he found composure. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence stretched. Then Ryan lifted his champagne glass. The smirk returned. Tell me something, Naomi. Several heads turned. The jazz music continued softly in the background. A chandelier sparkled overhead. And somewhere deep inside the ballroom, destiny seemed to pause and listen. Ryan tilted his head. His voice carried effortlessly through the growing circle of onlookers. Still single? A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd. Not loud. Not cruel. But loud enough. Naomi felt every eye in the room settle on her. Felt the weight of old assumptions. Old judgments. Old versions of herself that no longer existed. Yet she did not flinch. Did not lower her gaze. Did not look away. Instead, she smiled. Small. Steady. Almost mysterious. The kind of smile that suggested the story Ryan thought he knew was only beginning. And somewhere beyond the ballroom doors, a black SUV had just arrived beneath the glowing lights of the Grand Regent Hotel. A man stepped out, one of the most powerful billionaires in America, and he was searching for his wife. Ryan Mitchell had always believed that success could rewrite history. Standing beneath the glittering chandeliers of the Grand Regent Ballroom, watching Naomi Carter hold herself with impossible grace in the center of a room filled with power and prestige, he suddenly found himself staring at a past he thought he had buried long ago. For a brief moment after asking his question, the room seemed suspended between laughter and silence. Still single? The words lingered in the air like smoke. Naomi's smile never faltered. It wasn't the smile of a woman caught off guard, nor was it the smile of someone trying to hide pain. It was the smile of a woman who had already survived everything the question was meant to accomplish. Ryan noticed it immediately, and for reasons he couldn't explain, that bothered him. The young woman he once knew had never been this composed. The Naomi he remembered wore thrift store sweaters and carried secondhand textbooks beneath her arm. She worked 2 jobs, studied late into the night, dreamed bigger than anyone around her, especially bigger than him. A flash of memory crossed his mind. Autumn, 10 years earlier. The campus library glowing beneath golden leaves. Naomi sitting across from him at a worn wooden table, highlighting passages in a scholarship application while explaining her dream of creating opportunities for children who had been overlooked by the system. Back then, she spoke about changing lives. Ryan spoke about changing bank accounts. Even at 22, their priorities had been different, yet somehow they had fallen in love. Or, at least Naomi had. The memory tightened something inside his chest. Ryan, the blonde woman beside him, touched his arm gently. Victoria Hale, the daughter of a prominent real estate investor. Beautiful, sophisticated, exactly the kind of woman his family had always wanted him to date. You okay? Ryan forced a smile. Of course. But his eyes drifted back toward Naomi. He hated how effortless she looked. Not because of the dress, not because of her appearance, but because she seemed entirely untouched by the judgment that had once controlled her life. The circle of guests surrounding them shifted awkwardly. A few former classmates exchanged nervous glances. Everyone remembered the story, or at least the version Ryan had allowed them to remember. The ambitious young couple, the promising future, the relationship that simply didn't work out. Simple, clean, convenient. The truth had never been quite so elegant. Because 10 years ago, Naomi Carter had not walked away. Ryan had. As conversations resumed around the ballroom, Naomi took a small sip of champagne and met his gaze with calm curiosity. You look well, she said. No bitterness. No accusation. Nothing. The kindness in her voice felt strangely worse than anger. Ryan laughed softly. You seem surprised. Not surprised. Then what? Naomi tilted her head slightly. Just happy to see life has been good to you. The answer landed harder than she intended. For a moment, Ryan remembered another night. Another ballroom. Another gathering. His father's annual corporate gala. The first time he had brought Naomi into his family's world. He could still see the discomfort in her eyes as wealthy investors and politicians evaluated her like a curiosity. Could still hear the whispers. The subtle comments. The judgment. Too ordinary. Too ambitious. Too different. Too black. His mother had been less subtle. She seems sweet, she had said afterward. The question is whether sweetness is enough. Ryan had laughed back then. Told himself he could handle the pressure. Told himself love mattered more. Until promotions appeared. Until partnerships became opportunities. Until ambition started demanding sacrifices. And, eventually, Naomi became the easiest sacrifice of all. The memory surfaced with painful clarity. A rainy evening outside their apartment. Naomi standing beneath a street lamp. Waiting. Hopeful. Still believing in them. Ryan delivering the speech he had rehearsed for days. It isn't working anymore. The lie. The cowardly lie. Because the relationship had been working. His courage had not. The woman standing before him now knew none of the thoughts racing through his mind. Or perhaps she knew all of them. Maybe that was what unsettled him most. The ballroom lights reflected softly against the diamond ring resting on Naomi's hand. Ryan noticed it for the first time. His eyes narrowed. A ring. Simple. Elegant. Expensive. Not flashy enough for attention. Yet impossible to ignore once seen. His pulse slowed. Then quickened. Victoria noticed it too. Interesting, she murmured. Ryan stared at the ring, then back at Naomi. Something felt wrong. Not wrong. Incomplete. The story he had been telling himself all evening suddenly seemed to have missing pages. If Naomi wasn't single, then where was her husband? The question echoed silently in his mind. And somewhere several floors below, the private elevator doors were opening. A tall man stepped inside. His charcoal tuxedo fit with effortless precision. Security personnel straightened immediately. Hotel managers exchanged nervous glances. Because everyone recognized him. William Sterling. Billionaire. Philanthropist. One of the most powerful men in America. And as the elevator began its silent ascent toward the ballroom, only one thought occupied his mind. He was late. And Naomi hated when he was late. There are moments in life when a single decision quietly changes everything that follows. At the time, it rarely feels dramatic. There is no thunder, no warning, no music announcing the beginning of a tragedy. Only a choice. And 10 years earlier, Ryan Mitchell had made his. Back then, he had convinced himself it was the practical decision, the smart decision, the necessary decision. Tonight, standing beneath crystal chandeliers while Naomi Carter calmly held a champagne glass across the ballroom, he wondered if it had simply been the cowardly one. The memory arrived uninvited. New York. 10 years ago, Ryan had just received an offer from one of the city's most prestigious investment firms. A position young graduates dreamed about. The kind of opportunity capable of launching a career into another universe. Everyone celebrated. His father, his mother, his wealthy friends. Everyone except Naomi. Not because she wasn't proud, but because she could already see the price hidden beneath the reward. The dinners became networking events. The weekends became business trips. The phone calls became shorter. The distance became longer. At first, she said nothing. Naomi had always believed that love required patience, support, understanding, so she stood beside him while he climbed, even when he slowly stopped reaching back for her hand. One evening, Ryan brought her to a private dinner hosted by his future employers. The restaurant overlooked Central Park. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline like a painting. Naomi remembered feeling out of place before she even sat down. The women wore designer gowns worth more than her monthly rent. The men discussed investment portfolios, private jets, and summer homes in Europe. Ryan fit in immediately. Naomi did not. Throughout the evening, subtle comments floated around the table. Questions disguised as compliments. Judgments disguised as curiosity. Where did you say you studied? What does your family do? How fascinating. How inspiring. Every smile felt rehearsed. Every glance felt measured. Ryan noticed. Of course he noticed. But he never defended her. He simply smiled and changed the subject. For Naomi, that silence said more than any insult. The drive home had been quiet. The city lights reflected across the windshield. Ryan kept both hands on the steering wheel. Naomi stared out the passenger window. Finally, she asked the question she had been avoiding. Are you embarrassed by me? Ryan laughed immediately. Too quickly. Of course not. Then why do you never say anything when they talk to me like that? His jaw tightened. Because it doesn't matter. It matters to me. The words lingered between them. Ryan exhaled heavily. You care too much about what people think. No, Ryan. She turned toward him. I care that you care what people think. The silence afterward felt endless. Neither realized it was the beginning of the end. Weeks became months. The pressure intensified. His mother became more direct. His colleagues became more influential. His ambitions became more expensive. And eventually Ryan began viewing Naomi not as the woman he loved, but as the obstacle standing between himself and the future he wanted. The cruel irony was that Naomi never asked him to choose. She never demanded sacrifices, never issued ultimatums, never forced a decision. Ryan made it entirely on his own. A cold November rain fell the night everything ended. Naomi still remembered the street lamp outside their apartment building, the orange glow, the wet pavement, the sound of distant traffic. Ryan arrived carrying an umbrella and a rehearsed speech. She knew immediately. Some truths reveal themselves before a single word is spoken. Ryan, he couldn't meet her eyes. I've been doing a lot of thinking. Naomi's heart sank. The next few minutes would remain etched into her memory forever. Not because he shouted, not because he blamed her, but because he sounded so detached, so rational, as though he were discussing a business transaction instead of a future. We want different things. I think we've grown apart. This relationship isn't working anymore. Every sentence had been carefully prepared, every excuse polished, every lie disguised as logic. The rain intensified. Neither moved. Finally, Naomi asked the only question that mattered. Is there someone else? Ryan hesitated, only for a second, but she saw it. And that second told her everything. Not necessarily another woman. Something worse. Another life. Another world. Another version of himself. One that no longer had room for her. When she removed the silver promise ring he had given her years earlier, Ryan felt relief before regret. And that relief haunted him long after she walked away. Tonight, 10 years later, as he stared at the diamond ring resting on Naomi's finger, the memory returned with brutal clarity. Because for the first time in a decade, Ryan was forced to confront a possibility he had never considered. What if leaving Naomi had not been the smartest decision of his life? What if it had been the biggest mistake? Across the ballroom, Naomi calmly set down her champagne glass. She looked stronger, happier, more complete than he had ever seen her. And somewhere inside Ryan Mitchell, a dangerous feeling began to grow. Regret. The kind that arrives years too late. The kind that no amount of success can erase. And as the private elevator continued its silent ascent toward the ballroom, fate was preparing to show him exactly how much he had truly lost. The hardest battles are often the ones nobody sees. There are no witnesses, no applause, no audience waiting to celebrate the victory. Only long nights, closed doors, and a choice between surrender and survival. For Naomi Carter, the years after Ryan Mitchell left were filled with those invisible battles. The morning after their breakup, New York looked exactly the same. The city still rushed forward. Subways still roared beneath the streets. Businessmen still hurried toward glass towers. The world had not stopped for her heartbreak. And somehow, that hurt the most. For weeks, she moved through life on instinct alone. Work, study, sleep, repeat. There were nights she sat alone in her tiny apartment staring at the promise ring she had returned. Not because she wanted Ryan back, but because she struggled to understand how someone who once promised forever could walk away so easily. Eventually, however, grief gave way to something stronger. Clarity. One rainy afternoon, Naomi packed every photograph, every letter, and every reminder of their relationship into a single cardboard box. She carried it into a closet, closed the door, and never opened it again. Not because she hated the past, because she refused to live inside it. That decision changed everything. While Ryan climbed corporate ladders, Naomi began building something entirely different. Purpose. She completed graduate school with honors, worked in underserved communities, helped children secure scholarships, created mentorship programs, fought for opportunities most people never noticed were missing. The work was exhausting. The funding was uncertain. The recognition was non-existent. But every life she helped felt more meaningful than every luxury she had once envied. Years passed. One child became 10. 10 became hundreds. Hundreds became thousands. Slowly, quietly, the Naomi Carter Foundation was born. At first it operated from a rented office above a grocery store in Brooklyn. The carpet was worn. The furniture mismatched. The computers outdated. Yet the mission remained powerful. Give forgotten children the opportunities she once had to fight for alone. The organization grew faster than anyone expected. Donors appeared. Volunteers multiplied. Partnerships expanded. By the time Naomi reached her mid-30s, the foundation had become one of the most respected educational charities in the country. News outlets featured her work. Universities invited her to speak. Community leaders sought her advice. Yet despite her success, Naomi remained remarkably unchanged. She still remembered every closed door, every dismissive glance, every moment someone had underestimated her. Those memories never made her bitter. They made her compassionate, because she understood what it felt like to be invisible. Across the years, many people entered and exited her life. Some admired her success. Others admired her beauty. A few admired both. But Naomi never rushed into another relationship. Not out of fear, out of wisdom. She had learned that loneliness was far less painful than giving her heart to the wrong person. Then, 3 years ago, something unexpected happened. At a fundraising conference in Chicago, a keynote speaker canceled at the last minute. The organizers scrambled for a replacement. The audience waited impatiently, and one man sitting in the front row nearly stood up and left. William Sterling, CEO, Billionaire. The kind of man newspapers called visionary and competitors called dangerous. He had attended only because his company sponsored the event. Charity galas bored him. Public speeches bored him. Most people bored him. Then Naomi stepped onto the stage. William expected another predictable presentation. Statistics, fundraising goals, corporate buzzwords. Instead, he listened to a woman speak with such conviction that the entire room fell silent. She spoke about dignity, opportunity, the responsibility successful people carried toward those still struggling. She spoke with strength, without arrogance, with passion, without performance. For the first time in years, William Sterling found himself genuinely paying attention. By the end of the speech, the audience rose to their feet. William remained seated, not because he was unimpressed, because he was thinking. And when the applause finally faded, he asked his assistant a simple question. Who is she? Tonight, standing beneath the chandeliers of the Grand Regent Ballroom, Naomi glanced briefly toward the ballroom entrance. A small smile touched her lips. Most people assumed she came alone. Most people believed they knew her story. But none of them knew what happened after Chicago. None of them knew the man who had spent 3 years proving that genuine love required actions, not promises. And none of them realized that the most powerful chapter of Naomi Carter's life had not begun after Ryan left. It had begun the day William Sterling walked into it. At that exact moment, the private elevator reached the top floor. The doors slid open, and the billionaire husband everyone believed existed only in imagination was finally about to step into the light. Success often creates a strange illusion. People see the result. They never see the years that came before it. The sacrifices, the failures, the moments when everything nearly collapsed. Tonight, as Naomi Carter stood beneath the crystal chandeliers of the Grand Regent Ballroom, most people saw only the finished version. The elegant woman, the respected philanthropist, the confident figure moving effortlessly among New York's elite. What they did not see was the lie quietly circulating through the room. A lie that had followed her for years, especially after William Sterling entered her life. It had started innocently enough. A photograph, one charity event, one business summit, one fundraising gala, then another, and another. Soon, Naomi and William appeared together everywhere. Magazine covers, corporate events, foundation launches, award ceremonies. The media noticed immediately. The public became fascinated. Because William Sterling was not merely wealthy. He was one of the most private billionaires in America. He rarely attended social functions, rarely gave interviews, rarely allowed anyone into his personal world. Yet somehow, Naomi Carter seemed to be the exception. The rumors began almost overnight. Some said she was using him. Others claimed he was simply a sponsor of her foundation. A few suggested she was another temporary companion who would eventually disappear like everyone else before her. The internet created endless theories. None of them were true, but Naomi never corrected them. She never defended herself publicly, never issued statements, never explained, because she had learned something important years earlier. People who truly matter do not require explanations. Meanwhile, William watched the speculation with increasing irritation, not because it affected him, because it affected her. One evening, after a foundation board meeting, they sat alone in the back of a black town car moving through Manhattan. Outside, rain streaked across the windows. Inside, silence settled comfortably between them. William glanced at his phone before tossing it onto the seat beside him. Another article? Naomi asked. A faint smile touched his face. Apparently, you're dating me for my money. She laughed softly. And what are you dating me for? William looked at her. Not her dress. Not her beauty. Not the image the public saw. Her. The woman who spent weekends visiting schools nobody photographed. The woman who remembered every employee's name. The woman who cared more about helping strangers than impressing billionaires. For reasons the internet would never understand. The answer lingered between them. Simple, honest, real. That was the difference. Ryan had once worried about how Naomi fit into his world. William admired the fact that she never tried to. The rumors continued anyway, year after year. Eventually, people accepted a convenient version of reality. Naomi Carter was close to William Sterling. Very close. Perhaps even romantically involved. But marriage? Nobody believed that. Not even the media. Not even the business world. Not even Ryan. Especially Ryan. After all, A wedding involving William Sterling would have dominated headlines. There would have been photographers, press releases, magazine exclusives, a spectacle. Instead, there had been nothing. No announcement, no interviews, no public ceremony, no headlines. Just two people standing quietly in a small private chapel overlooking the Hudson River. A handful of family members, a few trusted friends, and promises exchanged without cameras. Exactly the way Naomi wanted it. Exactly the way William preferred. The world searched for grand stories. They chose something far more valuable. Privacy. 3 years later, almost nobody knew the truth. The wedding ring Naomi wore was visible, yet rarely noticed. And when noticed, rarely understood. Which explained why Ryan stood across the ballroom tonight looking increasingly confused. He had seen the ring, seen the confidence, seen the life she had built. But his mind continued searching for explanations that fit his understanding of reality. Perhaps she was engaged. Perhaps divorced. Perhaps pretending. Anything seemed more believable than the truth. Because accepting the truth meant accepting something far worse. That Naomi had found everything he once promised her. Love, respect, partnership, success. And she had found it with someone else. Across the ballroom, Ryan watched Naomi speaking calmly with several donors. For the first time that evening, uncertainty began replacing arrogance. Because a growing realization refused to leave him. The woman standing before him no longer needed validation from anyone in the room. Not from society, not from wealth, and certainly not from him. Then suddenly, a subtle change swept through the ballroom. Conversations slowed. Heads turned. A ripple of attention moved toward the grand entrance. Security personnel straightened. Executives exchanged surprised looks. And Naomi's eyes softened in a way Ryan had never seen before. She wasn't looking toward opportunity, or status, or power. She was looking toward someone she loved. At that exact moment, the ballroom doors began to open, and the truth everyone had failed to recognize for 3 years was finally about to walk into the room. The moment before a truth is revealed is often quieter than people expect. No thunder, no dramatic warning, just a subtle shift in the air. A change that everyone feels before anyone understands. Inside the Grand Regent Ballroom, conversations gradually faded. Champagne glasses paused midway to waiting lips. Executives interrupted their own stories. Even the musicians seemed to lower their volume without realizing it. Attention drifted toward the entrance, toward the towering doors now slowly opening beneath the golden lights. Ryan Mitchell followed the movement instinctively. Curiosity first, then confusion, then something far less comfortable. Because security personnel were suddenly repositioning themselves. Not aggressively, respectfully. The kind of reaction reserved for people who rarely needed introductions. Victoria noticed it too. "Who is that?" she whispered. No one answered. At first, only a silhouette appeared beyond the doorway. Tall, composed, moving with effortless confidence. Not the loud confidence of someone seeking attention. The quiet confidence of someone who had spent a lifetime being the most powerful person in every room. Then he stepped fully into the ballroom, and recognition spread instantly. A ripple, then a wave, then complete certainty. William Sterling. The reaction was immediate. Board members straightened. Investors exchanged startled looks. Several guests discreetly reached for their phones. Not to take pictures, simply to confirm what they were seeing. Because William Sterling almost never attended events like this. And when he did, entire industries paid attention. Ryan felt his stomach tighten. Not because he recognized William. Everyone recognized William. But because of something else. Something he couldn't yet explain. Across the room, Naomi was no longer speaking with donors. She was watching the entrance. Watching William. And for the first time all evening, her carefully controlled expression softened completely. The smile that appeared wasn't professional, wasn't polite, wasn't public. It was personal. Ryan had never seen that smile directed at him, not even during their best years. William moved through the ballroom with calm precision. People greeted him. He acknowledged them. Investors attempted conversations. He responded politely, yet he never stopped moving, never truly paused. His destination had already been chosen, and everyone slowly began noticing the same thing. William Sterling was walking directly toward Naomi Carter. The realization spread from guest to guest. Questions emerged instantly. How did they know each other? How close were they? Why was he here? Nearby, Victoria glanced at Ryan. You said she runs a charity foundation, right? Ryan nodded, but his voice felt strangely distant. Yeah. Victoria frowned. Then why does William Sterling look like he's here specifically for her? Ryan had no answer, because he was asking himself the exact same question. Meanwhile, Naomi remained perfectly still. No attempt to rush forward. No effort to attract attention. She simply waited. Certain. Comfortable. Like someone expecting a familiar arrival. The distance between them shrank. 30 feet. 20. 10. The ballroom had become almost silent now. Every eye followed the scene unfolding beneath the chandeliers. Some expected a business conversation. Others anticipated a donation announcement. A few assumed William was about to discuss foundation funding. None of them understood the truth. Not yet. Finally, William reached her. For a brief moment, neither spoke. The world around them seemed to disappear. Then William's gaze settled on her face. Not the way powerful men looked at important partners. Not the way celebrities acknowledged acquaintances. His expression carried something infinitely simpler. Affection. Relief. Home. You waited. His voice was quiet, yet somehow it carried through the silence. Naomi smiled. I knew you'd make it. A faint laugh escaped him. Flight was delayed. The exchange was ordinary. Almost absurdly ordinary, which made it impossible to ignore. Because powerful people performed for audiences, this felt real. Ryan felt his heartbeat accelerating. Pieces were beginning to connect. Fragments he desperately wanted to dismiss. The private smile. The wedding ring. The years of rumors. The impossible confidence Naomi carried. Suddenly none of it felt impossible anymore. Then William noticed something. The nearly empty champagne glass in Naomi's hand. Without thinking, he gently took it from her. The gesture lasted less than a second. Small, natural, instinctive, yet it revealed more than any public declaration ever could. People don't learn habits like that overnight. They learn them through years together, through familiarity, through love. Around the ballroom, whispers erupted. Questions became speculation. Speculation became realization. And Ryan could almost feel the ground shifting beneath everything he believed. Because for the first time all evening, a terrifying possibility emerged. What if the rumors had never been rumors at all? What if William Sterling wasn't here as a donor? Or a sponsor? Or a business partner? What if he had come for only one reason? As William's eyes settled briefly on Naomi's wedding ring before returning to her face, Ryan suddenly understood something. The answer to that question was about to change the entire night. There are moments when an entire room realizes it has been wrong. Not gradually. Not one person at a time. All at once. The realization began with a single gesture. William Sterling reached for Naomi's hand. Not dramatically. Not for show. Simply because it was the most natural thing in the world. His fingers intertwined with hers effortlessly, as though they had performed that motion thousands of times before. Because they had. The ballroom fell silent. Absolute silence. The kind that exists only when hundreds of people are witnessing something they never expected to see. Ryan stared. His mind desperately searched for another explanation. A business partnership. A close friendship. A professional alliance. Anything. But every possibility collapsed beneath the weight of what stood before him. William wasn't standing beside Naomi. He was standing with her. The difference was impossible to ignore. Nearby, Victoria's expression shifted from curiosity to disbelief. Oh my God! The words escaped before she could stop them. Several guests exchanged stunned glances. Others simply watched, unable to look away, because something far bigger than celebrity was unfolding. Power itself was changing shape. For years, many of these people had viewed Naomi through assumptions. The charity founder, the woman from humble beginnings, the outsider who somehow gained access to elite circles, the woman whispered about behind champagne glasses, the woman people underestimated. Now those assumptions were dying in real time. William looked at Naomi with unmistakable affection, not admiration, not respect alone. Love, pure and uncomplicated. The kind money could never buy. The kind power could never manufacture. The kind Ryan once held in his hands and failed to protect. A distinguished board member finally approached. His voice carried nervous excitement. Mr. Sterling, it's an honor. William smiled politely. Thank you. The man glanced between William and Naomi, then asked the question everyone wanted answered. How exactly do you two know each other? The ballroom became still again. Every ear waiting. Every eye fixed on them. Ryan felt his heartbeat pounding against his ribs. William turned toward Naomi first, as though silently asking permission. Naomi answered with a tiny nod. A smile touched William's lips. Then he faced the room. The billionaire who controlled corporations worth billions. The man newspapers called untouchable. The man investors feared and admired. And suddenly he looked less like a billionaire than a husband. Proud, certain, happy. His arms settled gently around Naomi's waist. Not possessive, protective, loving, and entirely public. We met several years ago. The statement sounded simple. Yet every person in the room leaned closer. William continued. She changed my life. A visible ripple passed through the crowd. Because men like William Sterling were supposed to change other people's lives. Not the other way around. Ryan felt something sharp twist inside his chest. William wasn't finished. I've met presidents. A few guests laughed softly. I've negotiated billion-dollar acquisitions. More smiles followed. But the best decision I ever made wasn't a business decision. The room waited. William looked directly at Naomi, the way a man looks at the person who became his home. Then he said the words that shattered every remaining illusion. It was marrying her. Silence. No whispers. No movement. Nothing. The sentence landed like a thunderclap. Marrying her. Not dating her. Not seeing her. Not engaged. Married. The wedding ring suddenly made sense. Every rumor. Every mystery. Every unanswered question. All of it. Across the ballroom, expressions transformed into pure astonishment. Victoria physically stepped backward. One donor nearly dropped his glass. Several guests exchanged looks of complete disbelief. Ryan stood frozen, as though someone had removed the floor beneath him. Married. Naomi Carter was William Sterling's wife. His wife. Not someday. Not secretly engaged. Already married. Every memory from the past few hours replayed through Ryan's mind with brutal clarity. His question, still single? His smirk, his assumptions, his arrogance. Every word now sounded humiliating. Not for Naomi, for him. And through it all, Naomi remained calm, graceful, dignified. She wasn't enjoying his embarrassment. She wasn't seeking revenge. She wasn't celebrating, because she had already won long ago. The truth simply happened to arrive tonight. William squeezed her hand gently, a silent gesture. One filled with years of shared history. Years Ryan knew nothing about. Then William glanced around the ballroom. His expression remained warm. But his next words would make the night unforgettable. Because he had finally noticed the man standing across the room. The man staring at Naomi as though he had just realized the greatest mistake of his life. And William Sterling was about to ask a question of his own. The silence after William Sterling's declaration felt almost sacred. Not because people were shocked. Because they were recalculating everything they thought they knew. Across the ballroom, guests stared openly now. The mystery was gone. The rumors were dead. The truth stood beneath the crystal chandeliers, holding Naomi Carter's hand. His wife. William's gaze swept calmly across the room, then stopped, directly on Ryan Mitchell. For a brief second, neither man moved. One possessed wealth, influence, and global recognition. The other carried something much heavier. Regret. William's expression remained polite, yet there was unmistakable awareness behind his eyes. He knew exactly who Ryan was. Not from newspapers, not from gossip, from Naomi. Years ago, on quiet nights, during conversations that mattered, William had heard the story. The first love, the heartbreak, the man who failed to stand beside her when she needed him most. He had never hated Ryan, never even met him, but he knew enough. And now fate had seated them in the same room. William offered a small smile, the kind successful men use when they understand a situation completely. Do you know my wife? The question sounded harmless, almost friendly, yet it landed like a blade wrapped in velvet. Every eye instantly turned toward Ryan. The room waited. Ryan felt heat rush through his chest. For the first time in years, words failed him. How was he supposed to answer? Yes, he knew Naomi. He knew the woman who once ate takeout pizza with him in tiny apartments. The woman who believed in people before they believed in themselves. The woman who held his hand during his hardest years. The woman he abandoned. The woman now standing beside a billionaire who adored her. Ryan swallowed, his throat suddenly dry. We knew each other a long time ago. The response sounded weak even to his own ears. William nodded thoughtfully, as if considering the answer, then looked at Naomi, and a playful warmth entered his voice. Naomi laughed softly. The sound was elegant and effortless. For years, Ryan had forgotten what her laughter sounded like. Now hearing it again hurt more than he expected. We dated in college. The confession spread through the ballroom instantly. Whispers exploded. People exchanged astonished glances. Victoria's face drained of color. Several donors visibly froze. Because the story had just become infinitely more interesting. The billionaire's wife. And the man who let her go. Ryan wanted the floor to open beneath him. Instead, he remained standing under the full weight of public realization. William's eyebrows lifted slightly. So you're Ryan. There was no hostility in his voice, which somehow made everything worse. Because kindness left nowhere to hide. Ryan nodded. William extended his hand. The gesture stunned everyone, including Ryan. After a brief hesitation, Ryan shook it. William's grip was firm, confident, steady. Nothing about him felt threatened. Nothing about him felt insecure. Because men who know what they have don't need to compete. It's nice to finally meet you. The sentence sounded sincere. And that sincerity was devastating. Ryan managed a strained smile. You too. Nearby, Victoria looked increasingly uncomfortable. For the first time all evening, she understood exactly who Naomi was. Not some charity founder. Not a social climber. Not a lucky woman. Someone extraordinary. Someone even William Sterling openly admired. The realization stung. Not because Naomi had become wealthy. Because she had become respected. Loved. Chosen. Meanwhile, William turned back toward Naomi. His entire demeanor softened instantly. The transformation was impossible to miss. Power disappeared. Tenderness remained. You haven't eaten. Naomi rolled her eyes playfully. I've been busy. That's not an excuse. A few guests laughed. The exchange felt intimate. Comfortable. Real. Years of marriage hidden inside simple words. Ryan watched every second. Every smile. Every glance. Every effortless gesture. And slowly, a painful truth emerged. William hadn't rescued Naomi. He hadn't completed her. He hadn't transformed her. He simply recognized her value when Ryan failed to. That realization hurt more than jealousy ever could. Because it couldn't be blamed on money. Or status. Or timing. It was about choice. Ryan had a chance. William had a chance. Only one man understood what stood before him. The orchestra quietly resumed playing. Conversations slowly returned. But the atmosphere had changed forever. The room no longer saw Naomi as someone fortunate enough to marry a billionaire. They saw William Sterling as the billionaire fortunate enough to marry Naomi Carter. And as Ryan stood frozen among the crowd, watching the woman he once loved smile beside the man who truly deserved her, he realized the cruelest part of all. The night wasn't finished exposing the truth. Because someone in that ballroom was about to reveal exactly what Naomi had accomplished without Ryan. And the revelation would leave the entire room speechless.